Later, you know. Make it noise.
I really did that over there. I was here not.
So funny for that. Sure, good. It was pretty. There's a lot of schools that they're right now, so they just see one. Yeah.
So just to let folks who are present know, we have started the Zoom session. So people who are on the Zoom can see through the camera on that laptop and can hear through the mic on the desk as well. We'll start the meeting in just a moment. I just want to let people know that we started the Zoom session.
I know.
We're still trailing into the Zoom, so in just a few moments, in a few minutes, we get started. And I will practice by projecting that I learned at Living Children's Theater oh so many years ago.
Wait, let me just say thanks for being here. It's fun to see folks in the room again. Welcome. I'd like to put on a mask and join us. I'm sorry I couldn't hear you.
I was just wondering if you do the pledge of allegiance.
That's not part of our meeting.
How is that?
I'd like to put on a mask and join us and submit public comment or head home and participate via Zoom. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance
To
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That looks like we've got about, looks like folks have stopped trickling in now, so we get over to the agenda, even though I know this part. Order this meeting of the South River School Board, and we will begin with our land acknowledgement. Martin?
Thank you, George. South River School District would like to begin by acknowledging that we gather on the ancestral homelands, originally known as Chocoliche, in the Shutsy of the Coast Salish peoples, on the lands of the Lower Skagit, Tulalip, Swinomish, Snohomish, Stillaguamish, and Suquamish, who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin since time immemorial. They have hunted, fished, and gathered here and have taken care of these lands. We respect their sovereignty and their right to self-determination, and we honor their sacred connection with the land and water. Please join me in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude to the Indigenous people of this territory for their enduring care and protection of the land which we currently occupy and share through the Treaty of Point Elliott, signed by 82 tribes in Mukilteo on January 22nd, 1855.
Thank you. As I've been doing at the beginning of each of these sessions for a while, I'll describe how public comment works in each of these formats. We're doing things a little differently because we are both in person and on Zoom here. We'll be making sure that both those online and in person have equitable access to make comment or make comment during both the public hearing and public budget hearing and during public comment. During the public budget hearing portion, which will come first, we will take statements for or against particular items in the budget. We've already had a discussion of this in the last board workshop. So during that period, we'll take statements for or against particular items in the budget. Any general comments that come in via the Zoom will be held off for during public comment. Anything that comes up in person, we'll ask you to wait until public comment if it's not a statement for or against a particular budget item. That's the purpose of the budget hearing after we get the budget presentation from Mr. Pullman. Later in the meeting, we will have a public comment time period. At that time, we will invite first those who are here in person to come up and make a statement to the board. The board does not usually respond to these statements except to thank you for your opinion. We appreciate everyone who shares their opinion with us. It's very good for us to know the breadth and depth of opinions in our community. After we do the in-person comments, if you would like to make a comment in either the budgetary hearing portion or the public comment period, by the way, and if you're in person, please sign up at the back table. That will get you the order. Once we've allowed those who are in person to speak, giving people who are on the Zoom time to put their thoughts together and take them into the Q&A function, then we'll move over to online comments. Myself or another member of the leadership team will read them. Again, we do not usually respond to these comments, but we do appreciate hearing them. Each person on the Zoom will give one statement, just like people in person. This is to keep things equitable so we don't have people coming back and forth and going back and forth in Zoom as we've had previously, because that's not fair to those who are here and present to be unable to join in on that. So if you are on the Zoom and you want to make a comment, please bring all of your comments together into one statement or select a collection of them if it's too long for one Q&A. Myself or someone else will read them all together, and then we'll hear them that way. That's everything for the public comment. We'll now move on to our agenda. And looking at the minutes that we have here, the agenda is available online. For those who are watching online, minutes are available online as well. I'm now looking for a motion on the agenda and minutes as presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the agenda and minutes as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The agenda and minutes as presented are approved. Now we'll move on to the budget presentation with Mr. Pullman. A reminder that comments in the public hearing immediately following this presentation will be in the form of a statement for or against a particular item in the budget. If you have more general comments about that, please save them till the public comment period. If you have questions that you want the board to respond to, please submit them via email. We are happy to respond to questions that way, and all of them that we're able to. Mr. Pullman. Oh.
Logistics comment. That mic picks up every sound in the room, so let's make sure one person's talking at a time. I just got a comment saying that they can hear others speaking, so if you wouldn't mind, thank you.
Good evening and welcome. This is the budget for the 2021-22 school year, which is a fiscal school year that starts September 1 and runs through August 30th of 2022. So it's basically a three-part process. First, there's the presentation of budget, which I'm doing now, and then there will be opportunity for public input. And then finally, there will be a budget adoption process. And I want to talk a little bit about what that adoption process is, because it's basically the board approving the appropriations that OSBI refers to, which is actually expenditures. So it isn't they approve the amount of revenue or anything else, because revenue for us is based on student enrollment, so it's an estimate. It's not really an actual amount. And for our budget process, we can exceed our revenue on an annual basis. We just can't exceed our expenditure. And if we get to that point, we have to have another budget hearing, ask for an extension through the type of process. So really, the board's job tonight, after listening to this and listening to comment, is to approve the kind of the top of the line expenditures. Like the general fund, it's approximately $22 million. They don't approve line items, so it isn't that they're going to approve $3,000 for diesel fuel for the buses. That's a management process in the budget. So I just want to be clear on what the role of the board is for those that are unfamiliar with this process. And then they will adopt it by resolution. So they will vote to adopt the budget or not. We are required to have this done into OSBI by August 3rd. So it is a time requirement that we do it this month. Everything I talk about and a lot more is on our website. So there's documentation there if you want more detail. And one of the things is there's an OSBI version of our budget. Let me show you that, but it's 213 pages long. So I'm not sharing that with you tonight. I think I've shared that with the board more than we need to. But it basically has 213 pages, a lot of detail, more breakdown. We're just going to talk about the summary items in the budget. So that is available for anybody, and it's through our website. You can access that and find that information. It's the exact same information. It just breaks down a little bit more. Still does not get to the line item aspect of it, but it breaks down into smaller categories. We have 5 funds that we budget for. We are a governmental accounting system. It's a balanced accounting system. And there's 5. The general fund is the one we're going to talk about the most. That's our operating fund. That's where most of the money resides in the school district. But we also will talk about a capital projects fund, Expenditures fund, associated student body fund, and a transportation vehicle fund. So the general fund. First thing we talk about, we look at this, is what are our enrollment. A large percentage of our funding is through the state of Washington, which is based upon student enrollment. We use a vertical school model funding to calculate what that looks like. So it's really important that we understand what our enrollment has been and what we expect our enrollment to look like in the future. And this is the South Louis School District from 1987 to current year, about 34 years of enrollment data. And you can see where we are. And it's important that we know this, that we look at this, we look at enrollment. How many kids are currently in kindergarten, first grade, second grade? What's the trend model that we use to see how they get it through the different grades? Is there changes? And there's always changes. A good example is the sophomore class. We get 30 kids or so to go to Running Start. Well, we don't get funded for Running Start from the state. That goes to community colleges. So it's one of those things we have to be aware of. 20 kids, $200,000. So we have to be aware of those type of things. So here's what we're using for our funding calculations. Our basic education program, 1,088.15 FTE, and FTE means full-time equivalent. So if you're in the high school, you're going 4 periods a day in a 4-period schedule. Yes.
May I just request that you project your voice a little more for those on Zoom? We're seeing a request come in. And for the silver microphone. Thank you, Dan.
I will be glad to try to do that. I think I can. Okay, so our enrollment for basic education is 1,088 roughly. Alternative education is 59. And this is a continuation of the SWAP program that we piloted this year. We've had about traditionally 5 to 6 kids doing alternative education, and that has bumped up, and we have those enrolled, so we're pretty sure that they're going to be there. Our special education program, we have 189 students in that program. Running Start, We do budget for it because we receive the funding and then we pay the community colleges. So it's 36 students, 55 for the vocational program and 9 for the biological program. If we look at student enrollment, this is just a breakdown by grade. And you can see where we were in 1920, what we had budgeted in 2021, and then what we are budgeting for the current year. So you can see that we are budgeting 1,088, and then the running start and the ALE enrollment. It also gives you a breakdown by grade, so you can see different sizes. And the one thing that you need to notice in there is that larger numbers are at the higher grade. So as students are moving through the system, the numbers that are coming in are smaller than the numbers that are going out. Our ALE predominantly it's a K-5 program next year. That's where the enrollment is. We have a few at the high school level who have traditionally gone through Spokane Virtual Academy, expecting that to continue. So we talk about enrollment because it drives revenue, and we have several revenue sources for the district. The first is the local levy. That's your property taxes you pay for local schools. It's not for the state school tax. That goes to the state of Washington OSDI. We don't see that one. This is the one that goes directly to the district. And it's about $3,384,000. You will notice a little later that you actually approved a levy of over $4 million, but we're going to roll back or not collect about 600,000 of that because we are limited by the state to a per pupil amount, and it only comes to about $3.3 million. We also generate revenue through the schools in a variety of programs. Our driver's ed program, investment earnings on money we have, gifts and grants from the community to the school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then rentals. And the rental is predominantly at the community center. You will notice in this history that where there's a school food service amount in previous years, we will not have that in the coming year, because that is money that we would charge for full price meals in the school. We are going through a program the federal government has allowed us to do this year and also next year that will provide free meals for every child, regardless of income or any other circumstance. So it's something I hope students take advantage of because we are getting that paid for fully by the federal government. So we talked about students and how they generate revenue. There's a program through OSDI, the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, that calculates our revenue based upon their vertical school model and the funding numbers based on enrollment. And it's a report that looks like this, and I'm not going to click on it, but if I did, it would show you all the calculations of how they come up to the $11 million that they will give as a guaranteed basic ed funding. So it's all the structure behind what that looks like. So what it basically does is it creates what we refer to as general purpose apportionment, and that is money that can be used for any purpose in the district. And that's about $11,758,000 in the coming year. And then there's special purpose money from the state, special education, lab funding, learning assistance, etc. That's a little over $3 million, and that's very specific funds for very specific purposes that has to be used only in those areas. So I can't take this money and pay for transportation or food service or anything else. It has to be in that program, or I return it to the state at the end of the year if we don't fully expend it. So when we talk about special purpose, we're going to have state and federal special purpose funds. This is the federal funding for the coming year, and I've highlighted a section in there. And this is the American Rescue Plan money that we're receiving, about $2 million. It's a one-time grant through the federal government and has very specific purposes. Predominantly, it's to address the learning loss due to being COVID and the things that have happened in the prior year. So you'll see that we went from about 900,000 to 2.9 million. So $2 million is that difference in that specific federal funding. And again, very categorical, very specific of what it can and cannot be used for. So this is a summary of all those things we've talked about, and it's $21,540,143. So based upon our enrollment projection, if we actually have that number of students, this is what we expect to receive in the coming year for funding. Again, the funding isn't guaranteed because the enrollment are estimates. The state starts looking at the actual numbers next January and recalculating. So it may be more, it may be less, depending upon actual enrollment. Expenses. So we talk about expenses, they're broken down in several ways in school districts. The first is by program, basic education, special education, vocational education, etc. And then it's broken down by object code, salaries, benefits, supplies, services, and travel. And this is just a breakdown in those different categories of how the money is spent. And again, these are high-level looks at revenue and expenditures. They're not a line item. We never get to that point. But basically, if you look at the very bottom left, which you can't see and I can't either, it's going to tell you that our expenditures are $22,333,000, I think it's $792. That is the amount that we asked the board to approve tonight for the appropriations or expenditures for the district. That is the budget that we are asking to have set and that we would work against in the coming year. We can also look at it by program. This is just your high level basic education, special education, your federal programs, any other grants, community center, all those things. Comes out to the same $22 million roughly. It's just a condensation of all of the stuff we looked at on the previous screen. And this is just a summary of basically the activities. Notice that if you look at our teaching activities and our teaching support activities, that we are, in the high 60% of our budget. So that's where the majority of our money goes. That's classroom teachers, paraeducators, libraries, those type of things. And then it's also broken down into administration and other support. When we talk about other support, we're talking about food service, transportation, custodial, maintenance, things that kind of across the district that support the learning activities. I do need to do this disclosure. It's a requirement by state law. MSOCs is our material supplies, other costs. So it's everything that's not salary benefits. We received from the state $1,457,179. And we actually have budgeted to spend $1,731,824. So local levy and also things like local grants are picking up that difference. This is just a quick summary of the general fund before we move on, but it shows you the enrollment and the number of certificated classified staff that we have budgeted for the district. So you see in the 21-22 budget, we are budgeting in all those categories for students, 1,183 FTE, a little over 88 FTE in certificated staff. And think about certificated staff, those are the instructional permit, so your teachers, your librarians, your principals, etc. And then classified staff, about 57 FTE. We talk about FTE for these, it doesn't mean people because it's based on the number of hours per year. So an example is classified staff member who works year round is 2,080 hours, but a lot of our classroom-based people work about half of that. So even though if a person who works 9 months out of the year, they are not a full FTE. Also, it's just a brief summary of our revenue and our expenditures. You see the revenue again is $21,540,143. Our expenditures are exceeding our revenue, which is $22,330,792. But we have fund balance, and we have a fund balance at the end of this year projected to be $4,150,000, and we're going to spend some of that fund balance down so that it'll be $3,336,000 at the end of next year. And it's a process when we look at the 4-year projection that it will go down over time. Okay, we have 4 other funds we need to quickly talk about. Capital Projects Fund. Capital Projects is, again, it's a local levy based on property taxes, and it's for building improvements in technology predominantly. So we have about $2.25 million coming through the levy. And then we have a grant through FEMA for $800,000. So we have about $3,055,000 in available revenue for the Capital Projects Fund. We're budgeting to spend $2.8 million of that in capital and the FEMA grant, and about $1,250,000 of it in technology. And basically, we end up with a fund balance of about $68,000. So with all the capital projects funded, as we receive the money from the levy, we spend it and try to spend it all 1 year. Quite often, because of the time it takes on projects, there's always a carryover. And that's why you see a starting fund balance of a little over $1 million. So basically, the breakdown is capital improvements, things we're doing in the buildings in the district, about $2,800,000 for the FEMA grant and $1.25 million for technology. We also have a debt service fund. And a debt service fund is, if you think about a mortgage where you borrow the money and you pay it back over time, that's what a debt service fund does. And several years ago, we did a large energy upgrade project in the district, replacing lighting, heating things that actually ended up saving the district about $100,000 a year. And so we are paying that back over time at about $87,000 a year. So it's actually a positive cash flow for us. So we transfer $87,000 to capital projects to make that payment and pay that energy upgrade. Basically, we have currently a balance about $240,000 on that loan, and it will be paid off by the year 23-24. ASB fund, Associated Student Body Fund, that is a fund that is generated by the students, managed by the students. And we're looking at revenues of about 159,000, expenditures of about 140,000 in that particular thing. And you see that they're broken down into 4 different categories: your general student body, athletics, classes, and clubs. So again, that is a student-generated, student-managed fund. Then we have the transportation vehicle fund. This purchase the large yellow school buses. It's not for the operation of transportation, but only for the purchase of transportation. And we expect to have a beginning fund balance of $308,600 at the end of the year. We do have 2 buses on order that will be here in August or September. We also receive $117,000 of depreciation from the state of Washington. So as we buy a school bus, we get reimbursed from the state over a 13-year plan for that. And we use that money to buy the new school buses. So that's where the funding comes from, this particular fund. So quick budget summary for all those. You can see the breakdown of each that has the revenue, the expenditures, how much fund balance we start with, how much fund balance we're using, and what our ending fund balance will be at the end of each year. Any questions from the board that you want me to answer before we move on to the 4-year projection?
Seems like we've asked a lot of questions of you on this budget the last several meetings,
Yeah.
particularly this last workshop. So
Right.
it doesn't look like there are any more at this point.
Okay.
So thank you.
And I'll move on to the 4-year projection. So a requirement a couple of years ago was for school districts to start looking 4 years out to make a projection on your enrollment, your revenue, your expenditures, and your ending fund balance. And again, this is a projection. Things change from year to year. Legislation changes, funding changes, students change. So it's just a projection is all it really is. So if we look at the enrollment, if we use the trend modeling that we have used in the past few years, based upon previous enrollment patterns, what kids we have in classes now, we can project out where we think we will be in the next 4 years. And I would be the first to say that getting more than a year out is really difficult to do. Things change. So again, it doesn't tie us to anything. It's just a projection that the state wants us to do. But based on this, you'll see that we are looking at about 1,088 for the coming year, and then 1,033, 978, and 935 if enrollment continues in the same pattern it has for the last 10 years. We also have to project each of those funds we talked about, what their revenue and expenditures are. And again, it's using that student enrollment information to calculate revenue, and then using what we know about expenditures. What agreements do we have for salary increases? What do we believe retirement rates are going to do over time? All these things that make up our budget. And so using that, what you basically take away from this is it looks like that we need to reduce our expenditures in the coming year to more match our revenue. And one of the things we're going to lose is that $2 million in federal funding. It's a one-time thing. So anyways, so basically what we need to do is look at reducing expenditures. This is what this table says. And that's just the summary of the revenue and expenditure and where we need to be. And we have a school board policy requires a 6% budgeted fund balance. So that's where we need to get. And that's about where we get by the time we get in the 24-25 budget year by making reductions in the next 3 years along the road. Debt service fund, again, we have basically 3 years left and it will be paid off roughly in that $88,000 a year range. And the money again coming from capital projects fund. The ASB is honestly, this is just a 4-year carryover, not knowing where ASB is going to be because it is based on students and their activities. So there's really no way to project this over a 4-year plan. And the last is transportation vehicle fund. And this just is used for creating a plan for purchasing school buses. Based on the number of buses I have and the age of those buses and how much is left in depreciation, I know what my revenue will be. And then I anticipate how many buses we buy and I calculate that to come up with a revenue. And then we just figure out based on the revenue, what can we afford? And when can we afford it? And you can see that we can't afford a new bus every year, $117,000 revenue, buses cost $160,000. So it's an every other year process. So it's just a planning process of when can we buy buses. There is a 4-year projection through OSPI, same type of document. It's like 16 pages long that has this information in it. Again, on the website, if anybody's interested in looking at it. Any questions I can answer for the 4-year projection?
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
See a lot of shaking heads, so thank you. You did answer a large number of questions from the community at our last board workshop, which I really appreciate. There's really great questions that help me understand a little bit more about what's going on. So thank you for those who spoke up during the workshop, and thank you, Mr. Pullman, for these presentations and answering those questions. Sorry, getting back to my agenda here, so I make sure I have everything right. I will now suspend the business meeting so we can have a public hearing on the budget for the 2021-22 school year. What that means is that statements in favor of or against specific expenditures in the budget will be read or heard. All other comments must be held until the public comment portion of this meeting. All comments or the business meeting that is currently suspended. All comments must be accompanied by the speaker's name and location. A reminder that these comments are about the budget and should not include complaints about individual staff members or personal attacks. Do we have a list of folks who are signed up to make statements on the budget hearing?
I think my comment would be better in the other portion.
Do you want to go shift your sign up to that? We have one other.
Yes, and Sarah McDougall, also in the general comments, so I'll change that.
Thank you. I will check to see if there are any specific budgetary comments in the Zoom questions then. And we'll get to those comments that were mentioned here when we get to the public comment period. Again, this is not answering questions. This is speaking for or against specific items in the budget. With that in mind, it doesn't look like we have any statements of that sort on Zoom. I'll give it another moment or two to see if any more come in.
And just a reminder, Brooke, if people do have questions, then they can email. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
That's exactly right. The best way to get questions answered, if it's not something that's on a specific topic during a board workshop, is to send an email. Okay, it looks like there are no statements for or against particular items in the budget from Zoom either. So with that in mind, we will close the public hearing. As I have the gavel and we're in person, so I can actually use it. And we will resume the business meeting. The business meeting will resume with our consent agenda. For those who have not been to a board meeting before, who are joining us for the first time, there are 60-odd people on Zoom and 40-ish people here, so I expect some of you are here for the first time. The consent agenda is common items that come up nearly every business meeting, and they're all bundled together, so we have a single motion and a single vote about them. If there are any board members who wish to remove something from the consent agenda to discuss it further, they certainly can do so. Are there any items that folks would like to remove from the consent agenda? A lot of shaking heads. So with that in mind, do I have a motion in regards to the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It's moved, seconded, and thirded. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Consent agenda, which includes the personnel report, payroll, warrant vouchers, 2021-22 board calendar, has been approved. We will now move on to public comments. In just a moment, we'll start at the top of our signed-in list in person. And then once we're done with that, we will move on to Zoom. I do want to remind folks, we'll be taking public comment from those in person first, and then we'll be reading comments from those participating online. All comments must be accompanied by the speaker's name and location. The school board will not usually respond to comments beyond thanking the speaker for sharing their opinion. Each speaker will have no more than 5 minutes to speak, and public comment will last no longer than 45 minutes. To address equity of access, those online will be limited to a single comment to be addressed to the board, just as those in person, unless the comment continues through multiple uses of the Q&A function, in which case all continued comments will be read up to the 5-minute limit. It is inappropriate to use these comments to make derogatory personal remarks. To quote policy number 1400, quote, however, the board recognizes the distinction between uncivil discourse, which it will not tolerate, and comments about the board, district, and/or staff that are negative yet still civil in nature, unquote. For those in person, comments which violate this standard will be stopped and the speaker will be asked to rephrase. For those participating online, the leadership team member reading the comment will attempt to edit out the derogatory comments but retain the general content of the comment, and will ask to make sure that the general content has been maintained. For an example, saying that Director Williford is a fool is a derogatory personal remark. Saying that Director Williford's choice to disallow derogatory personal remarks is a foolish decision is not, because it addresses the action rather than the person. Okay, thank you. While comments are coming in on Zoom, we'll turn to those in person.
First up is Maureen Green. Step up to the microphone.
Good evening. My name is Maureen Green. I live in Clinton, Washington. For full disclosure, my husband is School Board Director Damian Green. There are many groups and organizations who believe that Black Lives Matter is a political movement.
Excuse me, Maureen.
Yes.
Just a reminder, you are addressing.
Oh, I was hoping so. That's what I was wondering. I asked. I guess you didn't have
No,
to
just
say
be
it.
near the mic.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Good
Good evening.
Thank you.
I guess you heard the rest of that. There are many groups and organizations who believe that Black Lives Matter is a political movement. The superintendent and board have repeatedly stated only one description of the BLM movement by the U.S. Office of Special Counsel, further known as OSC. The OSC memorandum is dated July 14, 2020. You have copies of that right there. Most importantly to note, this memorandum never stated anywhere that BLM is not a political group, contrary to what you have been stating. In October of 2020, the BLM Global Network announced that they organized a political action committee, commonly known as a PAC, to push for change politically. They endorsed candidates in the November election, which OSC has stated would be the prime reason to change a group to a partisan political group. I know that all of you are aware of this change. If you want to continue to tell the community that BLM is not a political organization because the US government has not made it a priority to update the memorandum yet, then you are being disingenuous and untruthful in your statements. If you continue to stand by the old description by OSC, then it's important to acknowledge in the conclusion of the memorandum on the last page, it clearly states, and this is very important for our community to know, that BLM, quote, BLM is a hot button issue and both politically and culturally salient, unquote. I believe most people know what the term hot button means, but for those that don't, the Merriam-Webster dictionary defines it as, quote, an emotional and usually controversial issue or concern that triggers immediate, intense reaction. Well, against numerous objections, the school district has chosen to trigger our community for approximately a year now, dividing us instead of uniting us. All this because of the superintendent's decision to put up a BLM banner, a political and highly controversial hot button on our school property. And now you can't deceive the community any longer and say that you're unaware of the BLM movement officially becoming a PAC. You are required by law to remove that banner from school property because it is a political banner. However, the law does state that if you continue to display the banner, then members of the public are afforded equal opportunity for expression of opposing views. This public property is funded by the taxpayers. When you post an individual sign with a political view that others may or may not agree with, you open the door for what is considered to be permitting limited public political speech, which means you can't exclude anyone's viewpoint. And once you allow one banner, you must allow all banners. The most honest and undivisive action that you can make at this time is to simply remove the banner and put an end to the madness. I'm calling on you, the South Levy School District, to take down this banner.
Thank you for showing your opinion.
Thank you.
This is Laura Rookstall from.
I believe that Laura Rookstool is the person who passed the
Yes.
letter that you wish to read. My comment, this is Laura Rookstool from Langford. My comments are made in the form of questions. I do not expect in-depth answers to them here and now, but I hope ultimately they are answered fully for all the community to understand what is happening to our schools. Social media threats. Why was a student who made threats to the school on social media alluded to taking action that would get us on the national news? I'm going to skip over a brief section here that would help identify that student because I want to preserve student privacy. Why wasn't the sheriff called the moment it was brought to the attention of school officials? Are students who call themselves transgender a protected class of people by the school board? When patriotic conservative student published something similar, did they also get a slap on the hand, an invitation to speak to the board of directors? And I'm going to step aside one more moment here again to prevent identifying the student. But hopefully I'm keeping the intent of the letter intact. Banners. Can I supply a banner to the school to put up? I would like a banner that reads, "Protect all lives from conception to natural death." When can I have this delivered to the school to be put up at the tennis courts for at least several months? Was a vote taken by the school board to put up the current political banners up, or was this a superintendent decision alone? June protest. Which board members assisted at and attended the student counter protest in June? Why were they lied to and told the protest was against students? Are you going to invite representatives from the protest to come talk to the board to explain the grievances which are against the board and not the students? Since the students were clearly misled as to why there was a protest to begin with, are you going to take steps to allow the protesters to educate them? What is the South Levy School District Board purpose? In past email exchanges, my questions and comments have been met with citations from RCWs. If no decision can be made on a local level in your hands of time, why do we have a school board? And why do we pay the superintendent a nearly $200,000 annual salary? If the board and superintendent are only in place to be a puppet of the Washington State Department of Education and RCWs, what is their purpose? I feel these are a few of the many issues the community as a whole needs to be made aware of and to understand exactly where the South Levy School District Board of Directors and Superintendent stand. Asking questions is the first step. Thank you for showing your hand. Next on the list is
Next one is Nigel Hamilton.
Thank you very much for your service, all of you, the whole board and the superintendent. My name is Nigel Tabor Hamilton. I am a pastor in the Episcopal Church. I live in Clinton. I've lived and ministered on South Whitby for 21 years, most recently at St. Augustine's in the Woods Episcopal Church on Honeymoon Bay Road in Freeland. I also want to acknowledge that I am a straight, white, ordained American male. In other words, I ooze privilege. And so I want to ask for, offer apologies if I happen to tread on anyone's feet here. I'm also here tonight, not only representing the communities I mentioned, but also representing the Episcopal Diocese of Olympia, which is the Episcopal Church in Western Washington, and the Faith Action Network, which is an interfaith statewide partnership striving for a just, compassionate, and sustainable world through community building, education, and courageous public action. And there are multiple congregations in South Whitby who are members of the Faith Action Network. And finally, I'm here for myself. And we join together in support of the transformational and inclusive goals that the superintendent and school board have established. And want to say that we are excited that difficult topics are being discussed. No one says it's not difficult to discuss these topics. We are living in a time of dramatic change. It's a change that's happening so fast that it's difficult to keep up. I know for some of us, for some of my friends, those changes feel like they are threatening our way of life. And they can evoke fear, and they can evoke its ugly companion, anger. For others, however, these changes are long overdue and can't happen soon enough. So there's obviously a conversation to be had here. On behalf of the organizations I've mentioned and myself, I want to encourage the superintendent and the school board to stay the course that they have laid out, inviting everyone to participate in conversations about that course. There should be no imposition here. I also very much hope that those who oppose this course will make an effort to understand the causes that have led to this moment, and will engage with those who support it in mutually respectful conversations and offer constructive recommendations that will allow us to move forward into the future. We have to come to terms with all of our past to be able to move healthfully into the future. That means looking at things like our destructive colonial past and owning that past. My ancestors and many of yours had roles in that past. We can't pretend it didn't happen. The tsunami of change is upon us. It's in our harbor. It's sweeping at us. And so simply building sandcastle walls and hoping that that will prevent the change from happening, it's not going to work. My opinion is it's time to learn to surf. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Eric Frizey. I live in Clinton. And first of all, like the pastor said, I want to thank each of you school board members, because I've watched a few of your meetings. There is a lot of boring stuff you do, and a lot of talk, and a lot of time you work. But on occasions like this, things get a little more lively. So I want to address my comments to the role and nature of public schools, Mr. Green and his actions in the United Student Leaders, whatever that is. It's important to remember that public schools are public schools. They are funded and all citizens are required to support them. Their goal is to educate all family students in this district. And to do that, the school really can't get involved in divisive issues. It's a big distraction. yes, there are things that need to be discussed, but when you put a banner up that is a partisan banner, and I don't care what you say, it is, it's, some people, when they just come on the campus, some students feel unwelcome because they know their parents don't agree with some of the things that are associated with the Black Lives Matter organization. It gets you off track. You lose your base. Our goal is to make these kids proficient in the skills that they need to become productive and good members of a society that is open and welcoming for all. And when you got to remember that you're serving all the families, not just whoever is in charge. This is not a private school. If you want a private school so you can start your own training in whatever your political or theological or cultural goals are, this is a free country. You can do that, but a public school must make it welcome to all. Now, Mr. Green, some of you will be surprised by me saying this, and at first thought you may disagree, but if you give it some thought, I think you'll agree. For at least two reasons, I think Damian Green is probably the most valuable member you have on your group. You probably all disagree with him on a lot of things. Well, he represents a large constituency. Somebody has to speak for that constituency. And if everybody thought the same, there would be people who would be left out in the community who won't send their kids here and they won't pay their taxes, or they won't vote for levies. You've got to be welcoming to everybody, and having a Socrates-like gadfly voice on the school board is a very valuable asset. And the second reason is good decisions are made when there is a wide variety of input. That's why if our Supreme Court was all conservatives or all liberals, they would make terrible decisions. It takes somebody to disagree with the majority to make people think, there is something else. Maybe there is a path that we're going down that really isn't the right path. I was the president of a church organization once, and I was young and I just would count the votes. And finally, one of the other guys came to me and said, this isn't about counting votes and pushing through whatever you particularly want to accomplish. You need to build consensus. And if you, with someone like Mr. Green, you have somebody who is going to, if you listen, will force you to build consensus and will help better make decisions that represent the whole community. Now, I know some people said he threatened to beat up and sue students. Well, everybody has legal duties to every other member of our community. And if you don't comply with those duties, and if you injure somebody, well, that's what the law is for. And that's why there is no limitation on anybody filing a lawsuit, because our founders wanted disputes resolved in a civilized manner, not by raw vigilante power. Finally, United Student Leaders. Who are these people? Where were they? Who started them? When did they start? Where are the members? Who are the adults that are behind this? Where are they getting their funding? And why is the school and the school board meeting with somebody or some group that isn't even a recognized group, that does not have an advisor? And what's the student council for? It's been a long time since I've been in school, but most schools have student councils of some sort. If you want to find out what the students want, why do you have to go to some group that's not even a recognized group? And where are the meeting? And I think the school board and the school needs to tell the community who is meeting with this group. When are these these meetings occurring? What's being discussed? What decisions are being made? Where are the minutes to these meetings? Anyway, so those are my 3 comments. I thank you very much, and I hope that we get back on the path of providing superior education so that young people can succeed in life. Thank you.
I do want to note, I personally find David's input very useful. Sorry. Thank you. I personally find David's input very useful, particularly on financial matters, and to provide a different input from a different group on the island for myself. I absolutely want to acknowledge that. I also want to note that all meetings with the United Student Leaders Group have been below quorum within the rules of the Open Public Meetings Act and among meetings that we have had with other members of the community. We've been meeting with numerous different groups. Thank you.
So on the list is Amanda Murphy. Just a reminder that it's 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Amanda Murphy. I've got 2 students in the high school. Mostly I'm here to express my support and appreciation for the way you are all supporting the entire community. Your concise answers, your very clear explanations, your basis in factual information. We also very much appreciate the Black Lives Matter sign. And I really appreciate your distinction between the Black Lives Matter organization, being an organization, and the statement, Black Lives Matter, just being a statement, that I don't really see why anyone would ever object to or end it and then have to say but about something else. So I very much appreciate the fact that you can just say the words Black Lives Matter and my children who are Black can hear that and feel seen and appreciated and supported. Other children who maybe are not Black can hear that and just be able to say, yeah, they do. So thank you very much for being open to that and for supporting that. I really am just grateful that you're all moving forward in the way that the gentleman described about the tsunami, that it's changes here and change is scary, but change can be positive, especially when there is such a large number of people who have been discriminated against before those changes have been able to come. So the fact that we are making our school more of a place where all students do have a voice and do matter, I think is the most important thing a school can do. So thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Abigail Ireland, and I'm from Freeland, and I'm a junior at South Levy High School and a member of United Student Leaders. And I really want to thank the school for all of their recent equity work, because it's already paying off in our district, in our classrooms, and all of the students and a lot of the, or I guess many students and community members really appreciate it. And there's a lot of support behind all of the work that you're doing. And I just want to acknowledge that there's been a few comments that seem a little belittling of the knowledge of the students regarding our involvement in the school and what we personally would like to learn about. So I'd just like to say that I think it's really important that the school continues to collaborate with students about what they're interested in learning and what we find important, because it is our education. And we're the ones in school, we're the ones learning. And someone also mentioned that we need to teach all students in our district. And that's really important. And we need to acknowledge that all students have different backgrounds. And we can't erase the history that affected different people of different backgrounds. And we need to teach history that is inclusive to everyone, that does not erase anyone's history. And yeah, so I just want to say thanks to the school board for the equity work and the supporting of the students. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much for sharing that. It's so important to us to hear from the students because you are the reason we are here.
Jackson Murphy.
Hi, I'm Jackson Murphy. I'm from Clinton, Washington. I'm a little nervous. COVID's really messed up my public speaking. So I'm gonna try to get to everything that I have in my mind. I first want to thank everyone for having us, or you guys for having us, especially in person. It's really nice. And also for just keeping up with all the restrictions and making sure everyone's safe. I really appreciate it. The next thing. Oh yeah, so I also would like to thank you for continuing to keep up the Black Lives Matter banner. And as my mom said, standing behind the statement Black Lives Matter, although I do not agree that the organization or organizations of Black Lives Matter or anything to be, anyway. I also would like to say that I am also a member of USL, just like Abigail, and we are students. And we are actually students, and we are from South Whidbey, and our details are our own, and we are purposely outside the school district so that we don't have to have everything that we do approved by the school. And I don't think that's anything to be ashamed of or that's bad. And I want to thank you for continuing to meet with us and talk with us. Yeah, I am very, very happy with the work that the school district has done to continue and like countering racism and transphobia and homophobia and sexism and other forms of xenophobia, because I think it hasn't been addressed for so long. And I think it's just really, really important, especially just for everyone, that it be taught about and not teaching toward a certain type of student, but all types of students. So thank you, I guess.
Thank you for sharing that. Again, so valuable to hear from the students.
Nick Murphy.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Nick Murphy. I live in Clinton. I have 2 sons at the high school, and I work for the Seattle Fire Department. Black Lives Matter, the statement Black Lives Matter shouldn't have had to happen. But the police are killing more Black people than anyone else, which is why the phrase Black Lives Matter, where the phrase Black Lives Matter came from. Because people seem to be more concerned with broken windows at a march than they were about dead Black men killed in front of people in broad daylight. I fully stand behind this group's decision to put the sign Black Lives Matter up, and I appreciate the thought. I believe all humans are equal, and that's all Black Lives Matter is trying to say, from my understanding. I'll give you this analogy. I worked for 25 years for police and fire. I worked for the Seattle Fire Department. I worked for the city of Bellevue in their 911 center. I've been across the country. When you call 911, they don't ask you what color you are. They respond. When you call 911 and your house is on fire and the fire department shows up, they don't tell you, well, all these houses matter. We're not going to put this one out because all these houses matter. They address the problem. If the problem was Asian people being killed at the same rate, it would be Asian lives matter. That's where it came from. So when you think about that, you're right, we shouldn't have to have this because all people should be treated equal, but currently they're not. So I just want to come here tonight to express, as a local resident, a taxpayer, a parent, that I appreciate the work the school board's done. I think they've been very patient, very transparent in their decisions, been very clear, The decisions around COVID were excellent in an unprecedented time. I think that today, the suggestion that someone might vilify United Student Leaders is a disgusting idea. Those are just students, and they're becoming very valuable citizens. They're becoming great leaders, and I look forward to their future. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your opinion. And if I never hear unprecedented times again, it'll be too soon. Thank you.
Okay, before I give my comments, I just want to give some background so you know where I'm coming from. So my name is Clyde Mulmer. I've been living in Clinton for 17 years now. I spend a typical week during the school year, I spend 15 hours volunteering with kids. So, and I'm on have been on 6 different boards, so I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of the community, the schools and the students, more than some other people do. I've served on a board in New Jersey, the Board of Trustees for independent K-12 school. So I understand something about what it means to be a board member. All of the boards, my point is, the main point is, all of the boards have bylaws that talk about if the board decides something, it's a decision for all the board members. And to quote, Chairman Williford was kind enough to respond to my emails, and he said, quote, our procedure on the roles of our board and superintendent does include the requirement that all board members accept responsibilities for all board decisions regardless of how they voted. One board member, Damien Green, has repeatedly violated that policy. The board approved an equity policy and approved an ethics studies course, and forgive me if I'm jiggling, I'm kind of nervous. Yet Damien Green speaks up forcefully against such issues despite the overwhelming support by the school board, by students and community members. Damien Green's threat to sue the United Student Leaders, a group of students, just because his feelings were hurt.
Comment on people.
Can I please finish?
No.
Yes. Yes, you can finish, but there's a rule you read to us. You can't
That's
do
a
that.
projection.
No, he said he did.
He said,
We'll allow public comment.
Your rules.
Okay, but those are your rules. That's what you told
can you
us.
just be quiet while I'm talking?
Yes,
please?
sir, I will.
Okay, good.
You state the truth.
Excuse me, both of you, this is time for him to speak to the board. We can address it after his statement.
These actions, such as threatening to sue the United Student Leaders, is disgraceful, disrespectful, unacceptable, and cowardly. My question to the board is, why aren't these Suffolk school district policies enforced? Why hasn't the board spoken out in public disavowing his actions? Why hasn't he been asked to either accept board decision or to resign? And barring such a rebuke from the board members, that makes you complicit to everything.
Because he's done nothing wrong.
Thank you for sharing that opinion. I will note, the board has no policies in place for censure or removal of a member. If you would like to address.
Sure, that's,
Anything that you believe is factually.
yeah, just factually incorrect and untrue statements there that there was no threat made. You can go listen to the video. It's simply saying that I'm going to talk to an attorney. There's lots of reasons for a person to talk to an attorney, but I'm going to cut this short and say, if you would like to have a conversation with me, I'm more than open to that conversation. I welcome it. You bet. Feel free to send me an email. I'll answer you. I'll do anything you like.
I did send an
not
email.
like,
You
but,
didn't answer me.
but if you want to know the facts, let's not change the facts. Let's stick to the truth, because that's where it's at, is in the video. There was no threat made whatsoever.
Can I speak to that briefly? I've been looking for time with you. I joined this board in November, And my experience has been that you have had a very short window of opportunity for your fellow board members to connect with you. You've been a very busy gentleman, which I appreciate. But I have been looking for time for you with you and currently waiting for a response from scheduling that time. And frankly, my experience with collaborating with you has been because there's not a whole lot of collaborative energy until you're ready to air your grievances against the rest of the board. So I would just like to express, I am uncomfortable as members of our public are, that you sent a pretty scathing letter to a journalist about district issues, rather than collaborating with your fellow board members around those issues.
Sure, and I could say, I understand that with Brooke too, doing the same thing, but now it's been open, and we can write to the editor. But anyway, we need to continue.
Thanks. He's standing up for our community as well. We can have board member comments afterwards. This is the time for the public to comment on us. Thank you. Next.
Restorative Conversations.
Being here in this microphone.
Yep. If you stand right behind it, you can look at us and still be heard. Right.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Sarah McDougall. I live in Freeland. I'm a retired public high school science teacher. And I had a whole bunch of prepared remarks, which I just scrapped because of the dialogue that is going on this evening. Number one, I really appreciate that all voices are being heard. And I congratulate the superintendent and the board for being open to that and listening and paying attention and making changes based on what students are asking for. I also am an adult ally of the United Student Leaders. I have been with them since the beginning of their protest marches around climate change. And I am so proud of these students who are just becoming excellent leaders. They are gaining leadership skills in ways that you could never learn in a classroom. And they are asking for change. We live in turbulent times, and I really put out a plea to the entire community for having restorative conversations in which all voices can be heard and we can really, really hear each other, all of us, and come to collaboration and cooperation about how we are going to be and how we're going to be stepping forward in a world that is changing. I think this gentleman back here said, you know, it's a tsunami. It's changing so rapidly that it's hard to keep up. But I really put out a plea that we really listen to one another. We honor one another. All opinions matter. And thank you so much for your service to our children.
Well, Mr. Rose is coming up. I'm just going to note we have 47 Q&A notations on Zoom. So once we get there, it will take some time to work through that. Mr. Rose.
My glasses fog up, so I want to lower this thing a little bit. It's from Rufus R. Rose, 6529 Four Sisters Road, Clinton, dated today to the Board of Directors, South Woodby School District 206. Subject: request for information relating to race and gender instruction in District 206, school years 2019-20, 2021, and 21-22. 1. I've lived in this District 206 since June of 1975. My 4 daughters all attended and graduated from South Woodby schools. I have 9 grandchildren. Most of them did or may attend South Woodby schools. 2, I'm interested in the emphasis that is being placed on race and gender in our school, as evidenced by the Black Lives Matter and Pride banners displayed on the tennis court fence at the high school, and how the learning goals these banners are intended to serve and are measured in our schools. That is, are tests administered and grades assigned, and how is balance in instruction and student understanding assured. 3, I want to inform myself about the reasons for the emphasis our school district places on these issues. Accordingly, I request you provide me with a complete list of the approved instructional texts, pamphlets, videos, paraphernalia, assigned research, etc., used in all classes, counseling sessions, and in our school libraries that teach about race and gender. Also, the names and affiliations of all out-of-district consultants and the fees paid and to be used, fees paid and to be paid, who have advised and are plan to advise our teaching, counseling, and administrative staff about these issues. 4, please list the district policies that relate to race and gender issues. 5, lastly, I want to learn if the instruction we provide in our South Whidbey School District meets or exceeds the requirements of Washington State with citations of regulations and codes relating to these issues. Thank you for your attention. When will this information be available to me? Signed, Rufus Rose, my phone number, and my email address.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. We have a public records officer, and it happens to be Christie in the back, so her copy she will respond to. Okay, then I'll give it to Christie and she will respond.
I can note, one of those points, our policy 0001, the first policy listed on our policy website is our equity policy and also includes many, if not most, of the related policies in its text.
Hi, my name is Kathy Ireland. I live in Freeland, Washington. I have 2 girls at the high school coming this fall. I'm also the 7 through 12 South Whidbey PTSA president. And I'm here to offer my support to our superintendent and our board members for all of the hard work that you guys are doing. And all the time and effort you put into our school district, especially regarding Black Lives Matter, gender equity issues. And as a community member, a parent, and a PTA member, I just want to say that I've had several community members approach me to express their disappointment in Damian Green and how he's handled the controversy regarding the stolen Black Lives Matter sign, and how we feel that you should be working with our students for their education and not against them. So thanks again, everybody. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you for sharing that.
Chad Martin.
Hi, my name is Chad Martin. I live in Langley, Washington. I moved here in 1979. I went to this school, well, not this one, it wasn't here, but 4th grade through graduating. The school district now and what they're teaching looks nothing like when I went to school, and that's a good thing. It shouldn't. The world's changing. You know, education was designed around the Industrial Revolution, getting us all so we could fit in a little box and pull a handle and get a job done. The world's not like that now. Employers want collaboration and diversity, innovation. More information is never a bad thing. These young people, the things that they're doing, it's great. They're fearless. I wish I was like that when I was a kid. I wasn't. I wish I was. We're not asking to change history. We're looking at it through a new lens. Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. Yeah, that's just a little bit. That's not the whole story. And I think, more information and dragging some of these things out to light of day. Everyone having a voice, not just the majority. Those are all good things. And I really applaud the efforts for diversity and equity, inclusivity that the district is doing. And I think they should continue doing that. And a lot of our fearless patriots out here, it's a lot of fear-based thinking. It's don't be afraid of the boogeyman. It's have a conversation, talk. When it comes down to individuals talking, we usually have a lot of common ground, but when we get into our little groups and we're afraid to talk, nothing good happens. So thank you.
For sharing your opinion with us.
Hi, I'm Diana Sandoval. Let me know if you can't hear me. I have a very low voice. So I followed instructions and I looked at the agenda to see what I could talk about. And I was actually really glad to see your goal, your superintendent goals for the future. And I wanted to speak to that. And it's really related actually to everything we've been talking about tonight. I'm a parent of a South Woodby High School grad, a community member of 10 years, and also a racial justice trainer and consultant, and a woman of color. So those are some of the frames and lenses I want to speak from. And the first goal the superintendent has laid out is about restorative conversations with students, staff, families, and community members. And I want to say it's so, that is so important. You know, even if you're a business, it's really important to listen to your customers, to your consumers, whoever is using your services. And because then you learn what's needed. You learn what's not working, you learn what's needed, you learn what they're struggling with, you learn their desires. And I had the opportunity when my son was in high school to listen to students. And I was blown away with how much they knew about the world, even though Woodby is so, you know, small. And I remember that they were very, they were in tears because they realized, these were longtime students here in the district, they realized that how kids of color, how kids who identify as LGBTQ, how kids who are disabled, how kids who need special ed services, they realized how they had been treated in this district and that they had gone along with it. And so as they were graduating, they're saying, we don't feel ready for this world. And just in listening to them, I thought, oh my goodness, they are right. We need to shift things here. And we had conversations. And I just want to point out that it was a difficult conversation with the board and administration, with Joe. And I am so thankful that your hearts have opened and you're listening and you're understanding. And that's what happens when I do racial justice training. Most of the people who come want to come, but a lot of times people don't. And when they come and they realize that this is for the good of all, this is about all of our humanity, they don't want to leave when we're done because they realize this is for their liberation, this is for their humanity, this is for their truth. So I want to applaud the movement that's been happening in the district since the time my son graduated, and say I'm right behind you. I also want to talk to the second goal, which is to create learning environments supportive of every student's success. I did really major work as a parenting consultant and professional. I was part of a paradigm shifting parenting program at the University of Washington. And it was based on children's social emotional needs. And we would tell parents about what their children needed to thrive. And we would describe these social emotional values and we'd say, I see you, I hear you, you are worthy. And when we said that to people, they were like, oh my God, I need that too. That's what these adults were doing. So we all need to be seen and heard. So when that Black Lives Matter sign is on the tennis courts, I'm not Black, but I'm like symbolically, thank goodness I feel seen. These kids feel seen. I mentor youth who are youth of color in the district. And to come into a room where it's just youth of color, they just feel safe, they relax, because oftentimes in school, they aren't seen. They are othered, not intentionally always, but that's why we need this kind of work, is because it is unintentional. It's like we're all walking around with this lens and not realizing that you're seeing things in this way. But once you start moving it, then you say, oh, there's so much I've been missing. And so the last piece is this idea of transformational leadership. And, you know, this work of racial justice and equity, it really is an inside job. It's really looking at ourselves and to see how, if how we have privileges and how we don't, how others have privileges and how they don't. But it's really looking at inside us and say, how am I contributing to this or not? So that's what transformation means. It's just, and it's healing at the same time. So I just want to applaud Joe for moving the district forward and the board for listening and the United Student Leaders. I'm just blown away. I too wish I was like that when I was in high school, but hey, I'll do it now. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
For the record, documentation, that's evidence that Black Lives Matter is a recognized super PAC. Political organization. I appreciate the time to address this board. Some serious concerns, obviously, with many of us. I downloaded something. I'm going to read some excerpts from ACLU Washington. I didn't have to write this myself, but I thought I might remind the board and the audience here some issues that ACLU addresses. So the title of this document is Free Speech Rights of Public Schools and Teachers in Washington State. Question, do I have free speech rights as a public school teacher? Excerpt. What you say or communicate inside the classroom is considered speech on behalf of the school district and therefore is not entitled to First Amendment protection. Certain types of speech outside the school might also not be protected if the school can show that your speech created a substantial adverse impact on school functioning. Question, what are some examples of speech that can be disciplined? Example number 4, you are instructed not to discuss with students your personal opinion on political matters. In a classroom discussion on racial issues in America, you let your students know that you have recently participated in a Black Lives Matter demonstration. This speech may not be protected. I'm reading from ACLU document. I did not write this. Question, how do I know what is protected speech inside my classroom? Your speech in the classroom does not have much First Amendment protection. You should exercise caution so as not to give the appearance that you are advocating a particular religious or political view. Question, what about classroom displays? Which I would say this also directly relates to any displays that's on school grounds. It is likely that the school could require you to remove political signs from the classroom. Question, can I wear items conveying political or religious opinions in the classroom? Answer, free speech can only be limited if the speech would cause, quote, substantial and material disruption. The court has ruled that a school may ban teachers from wearing buttons supporting a current political candidate, as this could be considered disruptive. Courts have also upheld discipline for teachers wearing t-shirts with political messages or slogans. The same rule applies to classroom decorations or displays. It is best to avoid any appearance that you are advocating a particular religious or political view. Question, how do I know what is protected speech outside my school? Answer, if school officials can show that your speech could adversely affect school functions or your effectiveness as a teacher, the First Amendment may not protect you. If you use social media to comment about students, school or other work-related matters, or you use it to engage in what might be considered conduct impairing your functioning as a teacher, the First Amendment may not protect you. For example, bullet. A court upheld a demotion of a teacher who posted derogatory comments about a school administrator on her blog. Bullet, a court upheld the firing of a teacher who communicated with students through MySpace inappropriately as if he were their peer. So in closing, I would just like to remind this board that you have a fiduciary responsibility, that if violated, personal liability will become a serious financial reality to those that do not follow the law. Thank you.
My name's Bronco Erickson. I live in Clinton, Washington. I've noticed there are an awful lot of people in their own little bubbles, and we're stuck in our own little viewpoints and our own little world. I want to give you a little background on who I am and why I'm here. So first of all, I am so inspired by the students who are directing their education. The world is not in a textbook. It's not how the real world is. We need to adapt and evolve and make sure that the kids that are going through the educational system here are getting an education that is appropriate for their future. So I'll just use me as an example. I've been a firefighter for over 30 years, and I have proudly served my community, and it has been the best job of my life. It hasn't been the best job of my life because everything went my way, or because I always thought that my view was the right view. It turns out I had a fascinating education after school, just working in a firehouse. I get to work with gay people. I get to work with Black, Latino, African, Chinese, any race that you can imagine. I get to work with transsexuals, transgender. I get to work with people of races and backgrounds I couldn't even dream of. And this is a fascinating place to have an education and a conversation. We all sit around the same table. We all cook our meals. When an emergency comes down the line, I don't care that the person that's backing me up to save my life, I don't care if they're gay. I don't care if they're straight. I don't care if they're white. I don't care if they're Black. Their job is to save my life, and my job is to save them. And we seem to have forgotten that America is a beautiful mosaic of variety. And that's what makes this country such a strong nation, is we have fantastic opportunity to draw from experiences that are not just our own. We can learn so much from those around us. And it's a bit disheartening when I see people shrinking their worldwide view into just a little bubble, just their view, and just their perceived notion of how the world exists. Because the real world outside is so, it's so diverse, and we need to prepare. It's only getting more diverse. We need to prepare the next generation of students to actually function and operate and be empowered and be a participant in this incredibly diverse world that's upon us. Personally, in my history, my ancestors came way back on the Mayflower in 1620. So I have a very different perspective of the world from my ancestry. And in school, you know, I was taught, well, that's how America was founded. Well, I didn't get all the other history. I didn't get how did all the other citizens get here? What was their story? I want to see all the pieces of the puzzle. I want the kids today to learn all the different pieces of this puzzle that makes this nation so amazing. And we're not going to get that if we just learn one way. We need to see everybody's perspective. So it just inspires me to see students requesting more diversity in their education. This is actually what's going to prepare them for the real world. Sitting in your little bubble and imagining that the whole world is only as you imagine it in your perspective is going to be a detriment. So thank you for pushing forward and bucking the tide and making a change. It's not only going to make your education better, it's going to make the education of all the kids behind you better. And I am just thrilled to see so much student interaction and community organization to help people learn that the world is a very diverse place and we should celebrate it. It's the best thing that we have in our nation, is diversity. Thank you.
Thank you. This went right on time. Thank you for sharing all this.
Hello, and thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the in-person meeting finally after a year of Zoom. It's great to see everybody. I do want to just say one thing is that the numbers I'm quoting are the 2018, 2019, because that was the last thing that we had out comparatively. So the budget expenditure per student in South Whidbey School District was, in 2018, 2019, $13,161. There is an average of one teacher for every 20 students. Compared to the national averages, we spend almost $1,000 more with similar teacher to student ratio, and yet our academic performance ranks at a C+. Even compared with the other two districts on the island, we are spending more and achieving less. Coopville and Oak Harbor both rank at a B+. Not great, but better than we're doing. Wellington Day School tuition is currently at $7,760 per child. Island Christian Academy is at $5,700. These private schools are able to educate at 50 to 60% of the school district budget. I'm sure their academic performance must be higher than a C+. Otherwise, enrollment at these schools would not be growing while our district's enrollment is falling. Are we failing our students in the district's mission statement of educating them to meet the challenges of our global society? If our students are not proficient in reading, comprehension, math, and science, they will not be able to meet the challenges of global society. Are we failing them because the school board is fixated on justice, social justice, and activism instead of educating? Are we failing them because we spend time and money on anti-racism consultants and lessons on pronouns when many students haven't reached grade level proficiencies in core subjects? The school board has chosen to display politically charged Black Lives Matter banners and flags, knowing that according to our state constitution, schools must remain politically neutral. The Washington State Constitution, Article 9, Section 1 Preamble states, "It is the duty of the state to make ample provision to educate children without distinction or preference on account of race, color, caste, or sex. In other words, neutral and inclusive." Article 9, Section 4 states that sectarian control or influence is prohibited in schools. As defined by the Cambridge Dictionary, sectarian is a person who very strongly supports the religious or political group that they are a member of in any way that may cause a problem with people from other groups. BLM Incorporated is a sectarian political group. Yes, the United States Office of the Special Counsel is on record stating that Black Lives Matter is not political speech. However, the Office of the Special Counsel made that finding regarding the phrase Black Lives Matter prior to the organization forming a political action committee in October 2020. Therefore, the group BLM Incorporated is a political organization. South Whidbey School Board, by supporting the banner and flags at the high school, is declaring its support of a politically sectarian organization. This overt support of a political group is causing problems with other community members you serve and is strictly prohibited by the state constitution. Community members who, while they may support the phrase Black Lives Matter, because they do, they all do. We do not support Black Lives Incorporated. Support for BLM Incorporated has been falling since last year, since the defund the police policy push which is a core demand of BLM. Less than 50% of the population in the United States support BLM, the group. They all support Black Lives Matter. Well, I say the majority of us support Black Lives Matter. There are racists, but South Whitby schools need to serve all of their community without distinction as per the state constitution. No one should be marginalized. That would be discrimination. Two wrongs never make a right. Fighting racism against Black, Indigenous, and other people of color with racism against whites or those perceived as white is wrong. I will reiterate, the issue is with the school district taking a political activist role in the community, which is strictly prohibited by the state constitution. The school board needs to cease and desist with social justice activism and rethink the policy of hanging banners that are social justice oriented or politically oriented at all. South Whitby School District needs to focus on the core mission of educating students. You can remove barriers by treating every student as an individual and assuring that each student has equal access to learning. If the school district will focus on students' learning, perhaps student performance will improve. As a board, you must understand your authority is granted by the people of your community. In delegating authority, do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know. We, the people, insist on remaining informed so that we may retain control over the board we have created. We look forward to hearing our concerns. You're hearing our concerns, as you're doing now, and acting on them by placing our concerns on the board agenda for future discussion and action. And I would like to also add, the motto of our nation is E pluribus unum, from many one. And that is what our goal is in educating our children. Everybody should be treated equally. We should be colorblind, as Martin Luther King said. Oh, come on, people. Really?
Please order the
He wanted his children to be judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. Lady Justice is blind for a reason, because you should not see color. That is the reason. So thank you very much for your time.
You'll be happy to know that one of our three goals for this district, as was mentioned earlier, later, is focusing on academic learning. And that our equity work is working, we're working on, Tammy Campbell is working on moving barriers to encourage all students so they can all get the best education. Thank you.
Okay, Marky Molo. Hi, my name is Marky Molo. I should have spoken out 10 years ago in my life. Having a couple of teenagers now that were once small children that I sent to public school early on. And just so y'all don't lump me into, a racist category, my kids are actually of Latin descent and of course, Caucasian. And that's really relevant, but I know that there's kind of a stereotype that if I speak out against something that that is contrary to, well, the polarization, you might consider that. So I just want to say, but anyway, I had one of my children in the public school, and testing was really huge, like, academic testing and all these state testings and state standardized tests. Really big in California. And my little girl was just a wonderful, very creative, amazing, smart, intuitive little human. And she would take tests and just bomb them, even though she was smart and could articulate and had a vocabulary. And I did, everything that I could do from the time she was born till the time I released her into a public school to give her the very best start. And her love of learning went down. I mean, it was horrible. The papers, the tests we'd get back were redlined with the F, and then they would tell me, my God, listen to this. They told me that my child
needed to maybe be tested for mental disabilities, and that she was performing at a level that was below most, and they said this on the paper, illegal immigrants, second language English students. That was odd to me. I just want to throw that in there. So I couldn't fathom putting her through that and watching her be destroyed by red lines. And I took her home to homeschool. And in California, I live here. I've been here for about 6 years. We have the most amazing opportunities. We have charters of all kinds you could choose, and whatever specialty and whatever you like. And you could modify, you could get one teacher that can give you all the curriculum, and they pay for it. And they can help guide you, or you can send them in 2 days a week, or you just have all these incredible opportunities. So I always had somebody that I could go to, or I also had resources. I could switch curriculums. And I want to say one thing really important. Education is not comprehensive. It is selective. And I know what I'm talking about. I have a degree, and I'm also in law school now. And to continue my education, and being a homeschool mom of 2 children, you cannot begin to teach everything. And I appreciate what you said in it, where you're coming from, in that that we need to learn all these things about other cultures. And I'm going to imagine that you and I are about the same age. Okay, I'm sorry. One of the other speakers mentioned that we want to learn all of the different cultures. And I noticed that, this person has a really good heart, obviously. And we grew up in the same era. And we weren't plagued with this incredible, hideous division and polarization that is political. So now I got my kids going through, I've got them homeschooling, and I've got them raised up almost, and I would love to put my kids in public school. But now, not only have I gotten them probably past the red lines, now I've got different red lines out there. My God, it is a poster political activist campus. My God, we need to teach our kids. Forget teaching all the things. Parents can do a lot, and kids can learn after school and between and all different ways. But the public schools should really focus on serious academia. We need, number one, learn critical thinking. With critical thinking skills, logic, reasoning, you can get through all of this, including social justice issues. I mean, I grew up in a melting pot in Southern California, and I didn't have all this. And I have no problem with people of different color. I mean, we shouldn't be, we were fine. We're fine. Okay, sure. Oh gosh, I'm sure I had another point, but I just really wish that this all could just calm the heck down. And it's probably too late for me to put my kids in, because you guys aren't going to change that quick. But my gosh, I just wish, because there's one class by one teacher that I wish I could put my kid in just for that class, but I can't, because what you guys are doing. Damien, thank you. You're the only one that even comes close to representing something close to what I believe.
Are there any others on the in-person list? Okay, we have a very large number of comments on the Zoom. We're over our 45 minutes. I'd like to ask the indulgence of the board to read as many of those as possible.
Agreed.
I am dismissing some of these comments that come in without name or other identifying information, because we have to have that information when someone is speaking.
And just to clarify, you won't be answering questions, you'll just be thanking people for their comments as you did here.
Correct. I've going to go through here, and I've got several from one person. I'm going to combine them into one as best as I can. Kathleen Warren from Clinton. Are board members' voting records available to the public? If so, where can we find those records? How much of the federal special spending will be spent on equity training at the last meeting? More than $50,000 was supported for this training. How do you get voting records for budget-related items? Just scrolling down here real quick to see who decides what political banners are posted at school, including the BLM banner and pride flag. Scrolling down to see if there are more comments by that person. That's all I'm seeing. So thank you, Kathleen, thank you, Mr. Warren, for showing your opinion on this. I am going to answer one question. So Andrew's board voting records can be found in board minutes that are approved at each business meeting.
Would it be helpful for us to move them over to the answered live as we read them?
Yes.
We don't understand as much.
Yes, please. Andrew Neff in Clinton, Washington. How does Damien Green's threat to student children he serves align with the school board's mission values?
As we stated, that's factually incorrect. I didn't make a threat.
Thank you. I'm just getting through because I've got another one here from Lacey Jones, Langland, Washington. Why is the budget for Native Studies being eliminated? How much of the federal funding in our district is coming in through COVID stimulus, and how does that affect the changes in the budget? I think I saw some more from them, so I'm just scanning through here. To clarify, out of necessity, can someone please explain to us how this meeting is related to the budget? Just to note, the first portion of the meeting was in regards to the budget. The rest of it, this is public comment. Okay, I believe that's everything from that person. I have one from Mary M. in Clinton, but did not get a last name. So Mary, if you can put your last name in, then I will read the comments, but I do need your full name. Oh, yeah. Amanda Potter, Clinton. It is hard to hear the board members on Zoom. Is there any way to increase the volume on Zoom? Sadly, I don't think so. More of Amanda's comments. I hear the community comments really well, but not the board members, especially Director Williford. Also, can automatic captions be turned on? It would be really valuable for the ability to watch at home. I don't think that we can do live automated captions. I'm sorry for that. I will try to speak up. Barbara Shady, Clinton. I would like to express my strong support to the students, teachers, and administrators who are moving forward with truth-based, innovative, and supportive curriculum around systemic racism and sexuality. Engaging with these topics as they are doing is necessary to prepare citizens for the 21st century. I have a comment from Irene in Langley. I'm going to go out on a limb here because her last name, I believe, is in the username. So Irene Vernon in Langley. As a community member, I have found your courage to do what is best for our students commendable. I've appreciated your stance on the BLM banner and support of it. Its importance is varied, but in part, this movement is to raise awareness and what is more important than teaching young students and raising their awareness. Students are eager and hungry for more information, and you have begun to assist in their further growth and development. Your work and commitment to LGBTQ and BIPOC students is another area of gratitude for it demonstrates your strong commitment to equity and fairness. You're on the right track, and I encourage you to continue down this road for an anti-racist, inclusive, and equitable education is what is needed now more than ever. Again, thank you. Candace, I'm going to mispronounce this name, I apologize. Tkachuk, and I live in Green Bend. I stand with the students of South Levy High School who are standing for nothing less than an education that is based on the most complete view of what we know and how to interpret the world. Education that does not allow for structural or collective view when it comes to history or human sexuality is insufficient, and students deserve more. It's time to acknowledge that there are forces at play in our society that are oppressive and have been so for a long time. We do not equip our children and youth by pretending otherwise. Katrina Morris Freeland. I truly appreciate the Black Lives Matter banner that hangs on school property. It is one small step that the school district can take to make Black students, Black community members, and other people of color feel more welcome on South Levy. I would also like to thank the district and the board for implementing the ethnic studies curriculum. As a parent of a child who will enter the South Levy School District in 2022, I'm encouraged by these developments. They indeed increase my confidence in the school system and in the education my child will receive there. I support the United Student Leaders and am inspired by the manner in which they're advocating for their own education. Like them, I want my child to learn the truth in school, however uncomfortable that truth may be. I believe that we as a community must lean into that discomfort in order to create a stronger, more inclusive and welcoming community for all. Thank you. Diana Desick-Piazon. My husband and I want to thank you for all your service to the community. We are here to support you in listening to and carefully considering the input of the United Student Leaders of Woodby in their effort to improve ethics, honesty, and compassion in education, especially needing attention in areas of science and history. We have reached a tipping point in awareness regarding the serious gaps in misinformation, especially in the role of race in history. As a boomer, I look back at how I was taught history, and it looks more like mythology than history. Sailors know that if you don't know where you are, you don't know where you are going. When you think about it, truth is a navigational term. Thank you for your work to improving American education. AJ Telly. I wonder why more of you are not concerned about the loss of enrollment of the past several. I don't have a location for this. AJ Telly, if that is your full name, could you please add location? I apologize. I did read one other that did not have that information. AJ, if you send me this information, I will go back and read your comment.
Go to the final comment. Throw it cover.
Final comment from the cover.
Yeah, keep the location of posting.
Okay. Oh, yes, AJ Telly from Oak Harbor. Thank you. I wonder why more of you are not concerned about the loss of enrollment over the past several years. This is not a recent trend which reflects the poor quality of education chosen and enforced by the board. Compare the numbers and you'll see a major increase in enrollment numbers in private schools and public schools. This should be a clear sign that the education provided by South Levy School District is not what it should be. I'm wondering why so much time and money is being wasted on this new genre of pronoun confusion and anti-racism consultants. I've heard from so many parents about the frustration with this shift in education, focus on skin color, it is discomfort for so many ethnicities because their color is constantly singled out and the lack of a real education. It is deeply troubling and downright sickening. It is the school's job to prepare these students for adult life, to be good contributions to society, able-bodied adults who can keep society functioning normally. Focusing so much on this garbage is creating racial tension. It's time to stop. And then pause for a moment to take a breath, and also to thank all of those people who are commenting here on Zoom for sharing their opinions. I'm not saying that after each one just because I'm trying to get through these quickly, but I do want to give all of them their proper due. I'm okay with that. Katu will afford in language. Margaret J. Wheatley says that there is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. As I listen to the words from the community over the last years, what I hear is that this community cares about giving voice to those who have spent too long, not just underrepresented, but silenced. Politically silenced, socially silenced, violently silenced. These things cannot be denied, though I am disheartened to say that they can be buried. I'm a 37-year-old woman. Do you know when I learned about the atrocious act of systemic removal, inhuman confinement, and politically supported villainizing of the Japanese Americans? 28. Do you know when I learned about the massacre, brutalization, and violent destruction of a vibrant community inflicted on African Americans in Tulsa, Oklahoma? 35. From a science fiction television series, no less. I couldn't believe it. I had to look it up. I pride myself in my education. So it was a stark moment for me when I realized how I have lived a privileged life shaped by the fact that I'm a white, hetero-passing, cisgendered woman. I don't know the experiences of my fellow Americans of color. I can read about them, I can listen to them, I can research them, but I don't know them. I can't know them, but I can care about them. I hear a lot of anger from Ms. Green and her supporters, but what confounds me is that they're angry about a phrase that is so empowering to South Levy's community of color, makes them feel what? Why do they want the banner taken away? Why take away something that empowers students, shows them that they're safe in our halls, safe in our classrooms, safe in our streets, safe, 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 safe? Why does the banner incite so much anger in me? All I hear is it's political, political, political. But even Mr. Green admitted that the special counsel does not classify the phrase Black Lives Matter as political. Then Ms. Green comes back and says, well, that's just out of date. I feel we have yet to hear why this banner incites so much anger on me. Perhaps that is something we can just sit with and then really reflect on. Because as Ms. Wheatley says, No power for change is greater than discovering what a community cares about, not what a community hates. Benjamin Todd, Freeland. I support the Black Lives Matter banner in the ethnic studies class that will be taught in the school district this year. I am incredibly disappointed in the behavior of Jamie Green, and I think that he should resign from the school board due to his threats against the students under his purview. And note again, I think it's request that is not what he said. That is correct. Let's see, I'm still looking for Stephanie Hamlet, Cookville resident. I would like to express my appreciation to the board and for the efforts of USL. The desire for students to have a superior education was mentioned in the previous comment, as was the figure of Socrates. Well, you can clearly see in the words of the students here tonight, their abilities and deep thought and argumentation, as well as a passionate concern with truth and history. South Liberty is doing a great job and then some, and Socrates would be proud of these students. Sarah Chappelle. Could we do that with some noise from the outside? Sarah Chappelle, from Freeland. What is the process for recalling the board? There are no policies for that in our board policies. John Porter, 7735 Summit View Lane, Clinton. First off, thank you for volunteering for the school board, even if you're rethinking the decision tonight. Haha. I want to comment in support of the stance the district has taken in regard to social justice issues that we're all going through as a nation. Black Lives Matter means exactly that our fellow citizens matter, that their lives are important in the fabric of our country. It is not a political organization. Thank you, John Porter. Preston Osman, Freeland. Thank you to the school board and the superintendent for your budgetary commitment to restorative practice and inclusive education. This is the first step to creating more capable citizens and a more sustainable future in which we are able to tackle the mounting problems we undoubtedly have to face. Got names from someone from previous comments. I'm going to scroll up here. Okay, so Mary McGinnis of Clinton and Cynthia Bonner of Clinton. Scrolling up real quick. I have nieces and a nephew attending these schools. I have a concern regarding Mr. Green's position on the board, as he has indicated that he may sue a student for libel rather than using his time to meet with the students in question, using this as a learning opportunity regarding civics and the law and how to best pose questions. This could be an excellent time to meet, discuss, and learn about one another and these opposing viewpoints that have come up. I strongly feel that Mr. Green should recuse himself from the board should he be involved in suing a student, as it doesn't appear to be in accordance with supporting the students here. First, thanks so much for all you do for our children community. This is from the same person. I'm combining comments. We strongly support the high school students' rights to support Black lives and gay pride by supplying the banners. I believe that the student council voted on and approved these banners. They should be free to hang them. I, Mary, am a bisexual white woman with a nephew who is Black, a niece whose cousin is transsexual, and these banners represent our family, and we highly encourage this board and these schools students to continue on this path to inclusiveness. Mr. Green, I believe that there is an implied threat against the students to publicly say that you're going to speak to your lawyer because you don't like the question. The board should censure Mr. Green over this matter. Carrie Whitney, Clinton. I'm thrilled that our children will have the opportunity to take ethnic studies and that our district is changing to meet the needs of all students with policies, training, and actions that support students' voices, especially those voices who have been historically marginalized. Thank you, and please keep up the hard work. I have a question as to how Jamie Green is on the board appointed to serve children when considering threatening students with legal action in their public newspaper is not a conflict of interest. There seems to be a misunderstanding of his role.
Two things really quick. Not appointed. I'm elected. I'm elected by this community overwhelmingly 3 times. And again, that was a misinformation by the paper. There was no threat to sue students. I'll stick to that because you can go straight to the video and hear it that I'm talking to an attorney, and there's many reasons why one would do that, especially when they're wrongfully accused.
Ed Coleman, Green Bay. This is a question about the audio. I apologize for the quality of the audio. We're doing what we can. Malcolm Cumming, Clinton. I support an improved earth science curriculum that enhances students' career prospects in modern science. In particular, we need students who are eager and equipped to enter fields related to Earth's climate and the impacts it It is having now and will have in the future. We are learning that related feedbacks are augmenting and increasing the warming due to the direct impacts of CO2 greenhouse effects. Warming seems to be trending toward the higher end of IPCC estimates and is having greater impacts on the biosphere and our fragile economic system than were expected only a few years ago. A strong science curriculum will benefit our students and all of us. I believe that those are all of the comments that I have that come in with a name and location. Here's another one that just came in. Kelly writes in Freeland, I would like to go back and comment on the presentation the board gave regarding punishments handed out in schools in the state on the OSPI website 2 weeks ago. The allegation was that white students were punished less than Black, Native, Hispanic, and Asian kids. Bar graphs were even showing suspension days and white kids having less days than others. What was not shown and not discussed was one, what the infraction was, two, how many times that student had already been in trouble. Those are vital pieces of data that are missing, and presenting such graphs without all the data is dishonest and disingenuous. In the future, I urge you to show all of the data.
May I just note that there are comments with names but not locations, or without a full name, or with a location and a name but not a comment. So if you've tried to submit a comment through Zoom, please double check that you've included all of that required information.
Yeah, we have a comment from Aubrey, and one from MJ and Jim, and one from Charlene Davenport that has the necessary information but no comment attached. The joys of Zoom. Yes, I think we can now move on. What does the board say? Yeah, we've been listening to community comment for some time. Okay.
Thank you.
So yes, thank you everyone, both in Zoom and in the room, who have provided this comment. It is incredibly valuable for us to hear from the widest array of the community. Thank you very much. We are now moving on to new business. If you have questions that were not answered, either in person comment or on Zoom, please email them to the district. That's our best way to answer questions. Thank you. New business action items. Memorandum 2021-44. Resolution number 661, 2021-2022 budget. Do I have a motion in regards to this memorandum?
I will move to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion to be had on this matter?
I would just like to say thank you to Dan and his team for all of the hard work.
Ditto.
Absolutely.
And I think one thing that sometimes people don't recognize is with Southwood being so small, having finances that are as stable as the Southwood Dan is not something that is often seen in districts of their size. And Dan, I appreciate how you keep us extremely stable. And I want to recognize that that is a harder job than this district.
Are there any other comments or concerns on this item? All those in favor of approving memorandum 2021-44 resolution number 661, 2021-2022 budget, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2021-44 resolution number 661, 2021-22 budget has been approved. Memorandum 2021-45 resolution number 662, transfer funds from the capital projects fund to the debt service fund. Do I have a motion? A motion and a second. Is there any comment or discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving memorandum 2021-45 resolution number 662, transfer of debt funds from the capital funds project to the debt service fund, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Memorandum 2021-45 resolution 662, transfer of funds from the capital projects fund to the debt service fund has been approved. Memorandum 2021-46, approval of the new format for appointing student board representatives. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any conversation or discussion we have?
I'm excited to have students on the board again.
Thanks for the changes.
So for those following along at home, we are in response to student comments, we are having one of our 2 student representatives appointed by ASB. And then the other one will be given an opportunity at our October board workshop to come in and have us assist with filling out applications to reduce barriers of entry. We'll then interview and select one of them for the other seat. All those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Memorandum 2021-46, approval of the new format for appointing student board representatives has been approved. Our final point of new business is memorandum 2021-47, approval of the 2021-22 superintendent goals. Let's see one. If you'll look into that while we are completing this. Do I have a motion in regards to this?
Move to approve.
Second.
Is there any discussion to be had on this?
Yeah, Director Wilford, I'd like to say a couple things to focus in specifically on the second goal. We had a public comment earlier today that talked about the standards and talked about our students' rate of passing the state standards. And just for those in the audience, our current grades, I focus specifically on ELA and math because they're pretty consistent across the grades. Currently, South Whitby School District has 62.7% of students passing in ELA. They have 45.5% of students passing in math. Well, that's higher than the state average. I agree. It's not enough. So if we look at, well, who's the one that's not passing? And what I'd like to pull your attention to is when we look at our students who qualify for English language services, they're not passing. When we look at our students who are in foster situations, 80% of them are not passing math and 69% of them are not passing ELA. When we look at students who are experiencing homelessness, 80% are not passing, 69% are not passing. When we look at our students, or I'm sorry, 54% are not passing ELA for our students experiencing homelessness. For SPED, 83% of students are not passing in math, and 81% are not passing in ELA. So when the question comes around of how do you raise that number, that's what this second goal is about. The second goal is about focusing in on strategies that are inclusive and teach. And there's also been some conversation about why aren't we talking about our test scores? Why aren't we talking about those numbers? And I want to give a little bit of context. So I am on this board. I am an educator. I'm certified to teach high school history, high school civics, high school social studies. Also certified in elementary ed, special ed. I hold a master's degree in policy studies. I also hold a master's degree in special education, specifically in applied behavior analysis, and a third master's degree in educational leadership. These numbers haven't been changing. They're not changing across the state. And when I think about my classrooms, where I taught in BIPOC majority schools, what kids brought to the table mattered. When my first year teaching, when I watched a 12-year-old student be tased in the parking lot, how was he supposed to pass the test when that's how he comes across the table? We have to slow down. We have to focus on making this a safe place for our students' social and emotional learning. We have to focus on equity, because if we don't, those gaps, that 38% that aren't passing, can't access their academics. They can't slow down their cortisol levels enough to retain what we're trying to teach them. So when we focus on that, when we meet this second goal and we find what are the strategies that teach that 38% in ELA, that teach those 83% of SPED students, that teach that 55% in math, and those 81% of SPED students in math, that's when that number will change. And I just want to point that out because I think unless you understand and participated in the workshop, people might not understand why that second goal is so important. Thank you, Director.
Thank you. I always appreciate the clarity and knowledge that you bring from your professional life into this board. It's vastly appreciated, vastly useful to me, certainly.
Thank you, Andrew.
For those at home, I'm just gonna read through the goals, just to have them out there for anyone who might be watching the Zoom later or something like that. Goal 1, restorative conversations. Dr. Moshe will lead the district's engagement in and facilitation of restorative conversations with students, staff, families, and community members, leading to identification of new and continuing action items. Goal 2, learning growth for all students. Dr. Moshe will lead the district in prioritizing training and implementation of best practices that create learning environments supportive of every student's success in the future they choose. Goal 3, transformational communication and leadership. Dr. Moshe will participate in and lead the district leadership team in transformational leadership development to dismantle systemic barriers for students. Is there any other comments or discussion on the site?
A couple little things, because we often speak a language that feels really clear to us. But I would just love to hear, if I can put you on the spot, Dr. Moshe, when we say restorative conversations, what exactly do you mean by that? Because it's a model as well as a communication style. The other words I would look at are transformational leadership, because again, that's a really clear model and umbrella for learning and teaching. So if we could just have a couple definitions, that'd be fantastic.
Sure. So the restorative conversations, and you heard them alluded to earlier, are really all about putting our community together and trying to feel the heart, hear from all members of the community. And we have some amazing people, some of whom are in this audience, because my job will be to create the opportunities to have those restorative conversations, not necessarily facilitate them. And so we have some folks in the community who can help us with that facilitation so that we can get everyone to the table and talk about concerns and bring restoration. That is the idea behind restorative conversations, that we can heal the heart, whatever that heart may be. And there are all members that welcome at the table, not all at once, of course, but having those conversations where voices can be heard. So that's what we mean by doing that, so that we are creating, again, we've done it in the past, not quite as effectively as I hope we can work, where we've had opportunities for the community to address their questions. Sometimes it isn't as effective. And again, putting it in the context of a brave space that is also safe in the sense of, no bodily harm, right? We're all going to be safe. We're going to be together. We're going to talk about difficult things. We're going to have those conversations and hopefully find our paths forward together. So that's how I interpret that. But there are many people on the board and in our community that have much more experience with all of that than I do. You can probably say a lot better than I did. Some of them are right here. And then there's the other question we had was about transformational leadership. And I really liked both Marty and Andrea to find that when we were in our, and I'm going to put them back on the spot, when we were in our retreat. And so I would love to have that reiterated, because I thought it's just a really spoke to me.
Thank you for your words, Joe, and thank you for making space for the restorative conversations in whatever model they are associated with. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I would just like to speak to transformational leadership. Its value is not in getting more results based on what we can do more of, but rather getting different results based on what we can do differently. So I believe that to be a transformational leader, one needs to transform. It's the inner work. It's perhaps accessing perspectives or capacities that one may not have had access to before. And it sort of ties to that phenomenon that you can know what you know, you can know what you don't know, but you can't know what you don't know. And there's also the quote, you can't get someplace different by doing what you've always done. So I believe that when we speak about transformational leadership, we're thinking about actually creating internal, intrapersonal, and interpersonal capacities in this district's leaders that allow them to transcend what were previously the limitations of their performance performance and allow them to reach new levels of success in ways that may not even be imaginable from the perspectives that we currently hold. And that includes being able to just access another level of perspective taking that allows us to see more complexities and more nuanced truths about the work we're doing and the folks we're working with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. I appreciate that.
Thank you for everyone there. I apparently did have an old version of the agenda up on my computer. Yep, got it. I'm gonna lean over here. But first we need to, you have somebody else like to say?
I have one more question about these goals. I remember that we did discuss in some detail whether the third goal was related to transformational communication and leadership or simply transformational leadership.
Yeah, it's transformational leadership. The communication got in there because it was an old draft.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
And first we need to vote on it.
That was exactly what I was stepping back.
The actual titles of the goals are not what you're approving. You're actually approving the statements that begin with document which you will.
Great, those are all.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on this? Okay, all those in favor of approving,
We need a motion to approve these three goals.
it's already on the table, it's already been seconded.
Who did the second? I missed the second. I'll second it. Okay, thank you.
So all those in favor of memorandum 2021-47, approval of the 2021-2022 superintendent goals, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2021-47, approval of the 2021-2022 superintendent goals has been approved. Final one, memorandum 2021-48, approval of the collective bargaining agreement with the South Levy Education Association beginning September 1, 2021 through August 31, 2025.
I'll move to approve that.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any conversation you have on this?
Thank you to all parties involved. Appreciate that. Very hard work to get somewhere that's positive. Thank you.
Absolutely agree. Having a contract this long with this quick of a process, in my limited experience, is unheard of. I'm amazed at what SWIA and the administration did in collaboration. I think that the way that they were able to collaborate speaks wonderful things to that relationship.
Thank you, Bill. And thank you to the bargaining team. I'll pass that on.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor of approving memorandum 2021-48, approval of the collective bargaining agreement with the South Levy Education Association beginning September 1, 2021 through August 1st, 2025, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum passes. I'm not saying all that again. Okay, now we have three new business and on to reports. And we go back to Mr. Pullman for the financial and enrollment report.
And I will try to be quick.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is our financial report.
While he's doing that, can you try opening the door and see what's on there? It's getting a little warm.
Oh, let me, it's been more than 2 hours. So we are-
Oh, well, that's our problem. Let's leave that closed.
Okay, so this is our financial report through June 30th. And again, our fiscal year goes through August, so it's the 10th month of the year. And just summarize where we are. So we're 83% of the way through the year. Our revenue year to date is about 79.4%. So it's a little less than we would anticipate, but we knew that was happening because the enrollment came in lower than we had budgeted. But the other part of it that's positive is the expenditures are about 74%. So they're running below our revenue projections. Did I not share my screen? Now you see it?
Yep. There
Now
it
you're
is.
good.
Thank you.
Okay, great. And this is the breakdown of revenue year-to-date comparison to the prior 3 years and broken down by the different categories that we talked about, our local levy funds, our local funds, our state funds, the federal funds, et cetera. And it gives you a comparison where we are year-to-date to the previous 2 years in the same time frame. Also on the lower left, it's just a breakdown of what our revenue looks like on a monthly basis. And again, it's not an even 1/12 of the revenue we get. It's different percentages based on different months. If we look at expenditures, basically break it down into 2 broad categories. First is payroll, and the second is the non-employee costs. Payroll's about $13.8 million year-to-date, about 76%. Our materials, services, and other costs running about 62%. So that brings up that 73.8%. And then just a comparison of where we are year-to-date on payroll and MSOCs compared to last year. You see that both of those costs are down, and that's a direct result of having a remote educational process as opposed to being in person the entire time. If we add encumbrances to that, encumbrances of those costs we know we have, new contracts and things that we have purchased but actually haven't paid for, you'll see that we are totally at about 91% of our budget. So we'll anticipate that we will fall below that 100% in our total expenditures. And then just a comparison on the bottom of the different categories, salaries, benefits, and services, supplies, et cetera. And then the breakdown on the right is just a big picture of where the money is spent. And you see the blue, the red, and the green, which are the very large sections, are salary and benefit costs. Budget status report is just a quick explanation of where the revenue and the expenditures go by program. And you can see that year-to-date, our revenue is about $16.5 million, and our expenditures about 15.7. Currently, our fund balance at this particular month is $4,469,000 and some cents. Balance sheet is just a breakdown of assets and liability. It comes to the same dollar amount. It's just a different way of looking at our funding. We also have other funds. Capital Projects Fund currently has a balance of about almost $2.3 million in there. Expenditures of a little over $1 million, revenue about 2.3. There are projects going on, but again, capital projects, and a lot of it due to the pandemic has slowed way down and getting the work done. So we have projects lined up. It's just going to take a little while to spend it. So that money rolls over to the following year. That's why we have a larger fund balance to start with. Debt service fund, we currently have $651. There's no payment due until next December, which is the next fiscal year. ASB has about $38,000 in it. The transportation vehicle fund has about $212,000. We do have 2 buses on order. And the private purpose trust fund, which we don't talk about, we don't budget, is money that was given to the district on behalf of students for student scholarships. And we currently have about $790,000 in that account, which is the interest that's then used for scholarships every spring, graduate seniors. And that's the June report. There is no enrollment because we are past that period. Any questions I can answer before I happily sit down?
Go ahead and sit. Thank you.
Good, yeah.
Okay, we next move on to the superintendent's motion.
Thank you. So I do have one update regarding school in September. We heard from the governor this morning. It is required, not optional, that we are in masks, students and staff, regardless of vaccination status. And that goes for all of us inside any school building at any time. And so there was a lot of discussion in this press conference about the Delta variant and encouraging everyone and anyone who's eligible for a vaccine to get a vaccine and wear masks inside spaces. So I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. We had a lot of hope in June that we might be able to go back without masks. The good news is we're going back full time, every day, all day. And there will be some mask breaks outside. But for the most part, we'll be masked at this time, and that will be looked at again. What's to come, but not for a while. I just wanted to put that out there. Just learned that today.
Thank you. Now we move on to board comments or reports. Do any board members have anything to comment?
I would just like to thank the United Student Leaders for taking down the flyer. And although I wish you could link up the newspaper to it, or article to it, maybe we can work that out between us. Someone in the future, but at least thank you for removing that.
That was not for you. That was for us.
Please, this is a time for board member comment. Anything else?
No.
I'd like to make a comment. I said that's directed at college to Mr. Green. I feel earlier I did speak out of the turn. It was really an upwelling of frustration that's related to my desire to have some relational time with people, get to know each other as board members and service to the community. I think we both value the students and care about what we're doing.
I appreciate that, and Marty, I do want to meet with you, and it's very difficult to help people understand my work schedule, which is not a schedule, but when I get a day off, I only get 24 hours off. I don't get off Friday at 5, and then go back Monday morning at 7 a.m. I get off Friday at 5, and I go back Saturday at 5. So it's very difficult, and I only have 7 of those a month because of the way it works out, and sometimes it's more, but trust me, you're there.
Great, I appreciate it. I'll try to remain flexible and wait for your invitation. Thank you.
Unless the grandkids step up.
Grandkids are important.
Yes, they're going to overrule you anytime.
That's a priority. Thanks.
Any other comments or reports? I have one then. According to South Beach School Board Policy number 1220, board officers and duties of board officers, it is solely the board chair's duty to speak to the media on behalf of the school board. That according to South Beach School Board Policy number 1005, key functions of the board. It is a board member's duty to, quote, work to advance the community's vision for our schools, pursue our district's goals, encourage progress and energize systemic change, and ensure that students are treated as whole persons in a diversified society, end quote. During an interview on a local radio program on July 23 about his statement that he was seeking legal counsel in regards to what he claimed were libelous statements by students, Director Green, in contradiction of policy, took it upon himself to speak on behalf of the school board, incorrectly summarized the stance of the board in the district, and defended his desire to seek counsel in regards to his claims of libel. Director Green stated that the South Beach School District said that, quote, the White House Office of Special Counsel has deemed the BLM movement non-political, end quote. This has not been the stance of the school board in regards to the ban, which Director Green should know since he has seen numerous emails to the effect. While the Office of Special Counsel has stated that the movement is non-political, the school district's position has been that the statement, Black Lives Matter, is an important affirmation of our students, families, and community members of color, and a non-political, strictly truthful statement. As to Director Green's treatments of students, while I was speaking on behalf of the board as a whole, I only felt comfortable saying that, quote, an estimated 160 students out of around 600 in middle and high school combined gathered in the rain after school to speak up for what they want in their education and what the educational professionals who support them feel is appropriate. When students feel so much passion for learning, I think it's important to listen to them and support their efforts rather than feel threatened by them, end quote. While speaking solely for myself, I can state that I believe that applying pressure to students who are speaking up about their education and asking for more of it, particularly when the requests are in accordance with state laws, directives of the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, and the mission and vision statements of the South Beach School District, I don't believe that those are an appropriate thing for a school to do. I'm very disappointed that Director Green chose to offer an oblique threat to the students by stating that he believes that their question was libelous and that he was consulting with legal counsel.
I would appreciate you sending me that by email. I will respond to you by email, and I will show you some of the early emails that reference that I am misquoting. So, but I appreciate your response there, and we can have a discussion on that.
I do want to note a couple of things came up in public comment that I want to state my personal perspective on, since this is during comment. Black Lives Matter Global Network does have a panel, and they do donate to candidates. So do the Coca-Cola Corporation, so does Pepsi Incorporated. Should schools not have Pepsi logos or Coca-Cola logos or advertisements on their stadiums? Everything that I saw on the rules said that issues-based groups are not partisan political groups, whether or not they have a path. And also, there's been some requests for opposing views of Black Lives Matter. I'm curious. This is an open question. What is the opposing view to Black Lives Matter?
Want to answer to that? I'm happy to answer.
Is it all lives matter? No. If Black Lives Matter said only Black Lives Matter, then all lives matter would be the opposing. That's how English works. The only opposing view to the statement Black Lives Matter is that Black lives don't matter. And that is not a statement I will ever vote for or speak out in favor of on the school level.
Not to get into the debate, but I think the issue here is that if you were to go open a bank account that said Black Lives Matter, you're going to be in trouble for copyright infringement, right? Because if you're just stating the statement that Black Lives Matter is not associated with any organization or group, we open up another whole new world of legal discussion. And I think this is what we're really talking about, or a lot of people are really talking about, is the legalities of the phrase and the copyright infringement on that organization. It's not about Pepsi or Coca-Cola, who, when they donate to a PAC, they may be donating to a PAC on both sides of the aisle. They may not be just donating to one. So I think there's a lot of legal questions behind it. I understand what you're saying, and I just think that sometimes we have to get unemotional and just look at the legalities of the legal arguments. And some of the early legal arguments that just blow my mind are the ones when this country was founded in the Federalist Papers, and they had to write back and forth and so forth. It'll make your eyes bleed, but it's interesting to watch and read how they laid out certain things, from what the Senate does to what the House does and everything else. But it's a legal question, I think, more than anything than an emotional statement. And so I think that's where we get caught up here, is to not be emotional over the statement, but to look at it from the legal.
So to that end, when the students proposed that we put up the banner, we made sure that the district had its vision on that banner, because it is connected directly to the vision of the district. And in consultation with our legal counsel, which is the board's legal counsel, that vision statement and the fact that we're making a statement, Black Lives Matter, the connection makes it appropriate to the school district. The fact that it is students who put it on the schoolhouse walls also changes it back to the ACLU and legal counsel. I want to remind folks of the Tinker case that was during the Vietnam War regarding free speech. So we should look at that. We should also look at the students' rights to assemble. They don't check their First Amendment rights at the schoolhouse door. We do, as employees, as members of the district, but students do not. So if we take the case where students wanted to have prayer on school grounds, they are allowed to have prayer on school grounds. We, as the adults, are not, and we are not to profess that. But students are allowed to profess their position. So, you know, the ASB has taken over the banners and has decided what banners go up and what they want to promote. And for June, it was pride. For August, it's civility. I can't recite all of them. They were on the board agenda a while ago. And they also want Black Lives Matter up continue to be up because it fits for the student's perspective, the vision of the district. So if the board wants the banners removed, then the board needs to direct the superintendent to remove the banners. Because it has become that point, and it is no longer the idea that the superintendent governs what's on the schoolhouse walls, because this has become a community issue. So if the board wants the banner removed, then the board can direct the superintendent to remove the banner. And I believe that that should be up to the board.
If I can just speak from my personal perspective, I think it would be a slap in the face and a threat to the safety of our students to take down a banner that says Black Lives Matter. Unless they were to somehow replace it with a like statement, like perhaps a statement that says all Black lives truly matter. I wonder if a banner of that nature would perhaps soothe the concerns of those who are concerned.
Well, and we can certainly bring that back to the students.
But I just think to simply remove a banner that makes such a statement that is simple to the value of lives of students in our community would be to create really dangerous circumstances.
Thanks, Marty. I appreciate you saying that, and I would agree. I think about the way that I walk into a room, right? You know, I am fortunate that the only thing I navigate is the gender. But if I were to walk into a room and watch my rights be taken away, or a statement that was in place there to say, your gender matters, we value that, we want you in this space. To see that statement go away, I would not feel safe. I would not feel safe, I would not feel welcome. I would not, certainly not contribute. I think that Black lives do matter. And I agree with you, Director Williford. I don't understand why saying that is so terrible. I don't. And I think that me saying that does not mean that other humans don't matter, but I think it speaks to there are systems of oppression that are impacting that group of persons more so than they impact me. And I am very comfortable saying I see that.
I concur, Andrea, thank you. I believe that there's no way to be neutral on this issue. There's no way that this can be absolutely neutral. There's no way that this can boil down to legal matters. This is about people. This is about the trust that students are building with adults in their classrooms. This is about the trust and the safety that students can feel so they can learn. When a kid comes into a classroom, and I'm speaking as an educator for 25 years in various ways, one of the first things one does as the adults in the room is starts to learn from their kids. And they start to understand the dynamics of their classroom, and they see which kids are struggling, and they see which kids are thriving. And one of the things I've learned in that 25 years is that a lot of that has to do with privilege and systems. And so I feel it is my job as a person of privilege that, of course, like you mentioned, has some barriers, but I speak from a place of great privilege because I appear to be a cis hetero female. The only thing I can do is learn. One of the commenters on the comments on Zoom spoke to not learning things until they were 28 years old or 35 years old. We're always constantly learning and changing and growing. And if we hide behind the political agenda, if we hide behind we must stay neutral, if we hide behind this is what the law says, no progress will ever be made. And so I applaud those who can look past those neutralities we've built into the systems, again, those systems of oppression, and can look at the humans, the humanity behind the issue. And so I absolutely support the statement Black Lives Matter. I absolutely support every student who is willing to say their truth and who is able to, kind of pop themselves out of that safety bubble that we all like to be in and say, this is who I am as an individual, this is who I am as a human, and I believe in fighting for other humans who are like me. I refuse to be ignored. So Black Lives Matter.
Move to adjourn.
Are there any other comments? You're adjourned.
Thank you for your work. I'm a helpful teacher.